Hey everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV. Heaven forbid you get a flat tire out on the open road during a bike ride. But this is the way I generally change an inner tube, and I'm going to give you the best advice that I'm capable of. I know I've dispensed a lot of advice, but practice this at home until you're proficient. That will save you a lot of heartache and hardship out on the open road when you do flat. It's not if, but when. So all the air is out of the tire. I've just flatted. I like these rather than a seat bag that goes underneath your saddle and attaches at your seat post and the rails of the saddle. I like these little tool kits that fit in your water bottle cage. These are great. In mine is in a previous video, but this is one thing I don't usually have, but a lot of people do. I prefer the frame pump. For reasons that I'll explain presently. I carry one lever, and what I do is get the quick release skewer handy in case I need it, and that can work as a lever too. If this should break or you should happen to forget it, you can, not always, and it depends on the brand. This one came with these wheels, DT Swiss hubs, and HED rims. This will work in a pinch. When you're out on the road and you're desperate, you can sometimes make it work. But that's the worst case scenario. Tire lever, obviously much better. So you flatted, take your wheel out of the bike. This will get your hands dirty, but don't be afraid. Then put your thumb against the rim and the bead of the tire, and then move it away from you all the way around. Then next is to pull the tire out. The next step is one of the most important and oftentimes overlooked. You need to run your fingers all the way around the tire to find out what has made you flat. If you don't do that, when you put air in the next tire and you start to roll again, you could get another flat. Oftentimes there'll be a thorn in the tread that you can't see, a little tiny piece of wire. All sorts of things can flat. A piece of glass that gets in the tread. Flatting is a lot more uncommon now than it used to be because of how well tires are made. So once there's no obstructions in the tire, another thing you want to do, if you've pinch flatted, if you've hit something so hard and you don't have enough air pressure and it pinch flats, it has the rim will leave a little snake bite on the tube. It might also damage the rim, and if that's the case, it's going to be very tricky. I don't usually carry a file with me, so if there is a burr, a sharp edge on your rim, you might have to call in reinforcements. You might have to get an Uber ride home. So once that's out, get the spare tire out of there, or your seat bag. You'll have a cap, undo the valve, and this is a good thing to have, especially if you're using a frame pump. Keep that handy. One thing that can ruin many a ride is if the valve stem is not long enough for your rim. So if the rim width, if you have a deep rim section, deep arrow rim, and your valve does not fit adequately, you can't pump it up no matter what. You need a valve extender. So make sure that your valve stem is appropriate for the rims that you're using. Keep this somewhere handy. I put the valve hole at 12 o'clock. Fill the tire with a little bit of lung power just to give it some structure. You don't want it too full because it's going to be very tough to put back in. So I drop down, and opposite from the valve hole, I put the tire in, the inner tube into the tire, and keep it as close to the rim as possible. And when you have a little bit of air in your inner tube, it is a lot easier to line it up around the whole tire. Put that in. Now, as you're putting the inner tube in, you want to make sure that your valve stays relatively straight, and you can adjust that a little bit when you pump it up. I start putting the tire back on, making sure that I keep the inner tube seated against the bottom of the rim, and it's not protruding. I don't usually ride with my glasses, so maybe it's better to take them off. I hopefully can still see. So now that it's in, it's a little bit tricky sometimes, especially if it's a very tight seal between the tire and the rim, and it takes a little bit of elbow grease to get it in there sometimes. Make sure that the inner tube is as in as possible, and if you start putting the tire on at the last moment, the tire lever helps a lot. Just make sure that the inner tube is seated and that it doesn't pop out while you put the last couple of inches of the tire around the rim. Sometimes, if you're struggling at this point, if it's very hard to get on, what you can do is stretch the tire down towards the last couple of inches before it goes on, and then it might be a little bit easier. There. So remember that. If it's absolutely impossible, you might have to use this. You might have to use your tire lever to do the last few inches as well. So let's say it's absolutely impossible. You get to here, you still have the remaining little bit, and it's just absolutely not possible. Take the tire lever. Now this is a little bit tricky because it's easy to pinch the tube when you're doing this. So make sure that you're clear of the inner tube and pop it on there. Now when you're taking it out, be very careful not to pinch the inner tube, and then it should go on the rest of the way. I like a frame pump, like I said. This is where the little O-ring comes in, goes against the threads. This way, it's much easier to pump your tire up. With a floor pump, and hopefully you have one of those that pump up your tires before you leave. With a floor pump, you don't really need that because a lot easier to do in the ideal conditions of pumping your tire up at home. So what that does, it keeps the valve stem in the right place, and it's much easier to pump the tire up. So with this pump, this fits in the frame, also a good place for your finger. And after so many years, I can almost feel the amount of pressure that's in there. And when it gets to be really difficult, I know it's almost ready. Pretty good, pretty good. And then out clearly, and make sure you don't let the air pressure that you've just put in the tire blow the pump apart. That's very easy to do with these old ones. New ones are made a lot better, but super simple. That's like 110 pounds of pressure. This will come loose a little bit as you put air into it. Skewer, back on, and you're good to go. That's how to change a tire. But remember, practice before you go out on the open road and try that. Click on my face to subscribe. Click on the t-shirts to buy some merchandise. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter to get updates when I'm going to do these. And thanks a lot for the thumbs up.